You have probably heard too many times to count about your inner child. But what does that really mean? What does healing your inner child really look like? And is it something that everybody needs to do? Is it something that you should do? Well, it kind of depends. Welcome. I'm Peggy Oliveira. Thank you for joining me. So I say it depends because it kind of really matters how you approach it. And that's what I mean by depends, because if it's approached in a way that is kind of disconnected from the wounding, from what that wounding means, how it shows up in your current life, then it's likely not going to be helpful. In fact, it could actually be more harmful. If you're doing it in a way that does acknowledge all of those things and kind of helps you along the journey of truly being able to heal that inner child, then of course it's a good thing. So, is it something that everybody needs? I would say yeah, regardless of trauma history, because as I so often say, we are all wounded. We cannot escape childhood without being wounded. Now, certainly some of those wounds may be relatively minor. And for most people watching this channel, those wounds are often quite significant. And because, again, for most people watching this channel, those wounds were probably ignored, denied, rationalized, minimized for very valid reasons. Those wounds did not get a chance to heal. And when those wounds are not healed, they continue to deepen, they expand. And when I talk about how the impact of childhood trauma affects everything in our life, that is part of the reason why. And so whether it's minor wounding or significant wounding over a lot of time, there is going to be a part of us that we are likely disconnected from. And that can look a lot of different ways. But when we're working on healing, particularly from trauma, but even just kind of emotional healing, understanding ourselves, we need to be able to recognize what those wounds actually are. What is it that actually needs healing? And that can be really challenging. That's part of the acknowledgement and validation that I talk about when I talk about healing from childhood trauma. But even in other cases, looking at something that wounded you, but you've been able to kind of ignore it or deny it, going back and recognizing the impact that it had, or maybe how it felt at the time, even if just conceptually understanding that, it can be a little challenging. And so it's not an easy thing necessarily to do. And I've had kind of an interesting experience over the last maybe month and a half or so, as I've really worked on completing my workbook on healing your inner child. And I've shared this with you before, I shared the book with you before, but it's taken me a while to get through the final edits and actually hit publish. So as you're watching this video, it should be available now on Amazon. And I actually want to share a little bit of it with you, but I want to share with you first just kind of my experience with it in the last month and a half or so. And I actually started working on it, I don't even remember when now, and then I kind of forgot about it, and relatively recently went back to it, put it down again, and then, just like I said, in the last month or so, really finalized it. And in that process, obviously I read it. I wanted to make sure that the things that I thought were kind of important were in there and that sort of thing. But it was more from a analytical standpoint, definitely much more in my head. And after getting the proof and reading through it as I would if I were reading somebody else's book, or as somebody reading this one will go through it. As I read through it, I found myself feeling some surprising feelings. And I wanted to share that with you because I talk all the time about how healing is a journey and that we never get to a place where we reach this summit and things never bother us and we never feel affected by things or anything like that. And I also talk about vulnerability and how when we are feeling vulnerable, and there are so many things that can make us vulnerable, that other things that come up can sometimes affect us a little bit more. So as I read through it, I found myself feeling this connection on a level to different parts of my inner children, I guess I could say, in a way that I really am not sure that I've ever felt before, which is interesting because I've done some inner child work. I don't know that I would have referred to it in that way, but I definitely have. And I've done some powerful work in that way, especially when it comes to shame. But as I read it, I just found myself feeling that deeper connection. And within that deeper connection, I felt this just softening in my heart and this desire to really connect with the little version of myself and all stages really, but particularly like the little, 3 or 4-year-old and then like the 13, 14-year-old, which is the one that I've had some issues with. That's where I carried a lot of shame. But this softening that really kind of surprised me, and I just felt more kind of tenderness to those parts of myself, particularly the teenager that, and I, not even just the teenager, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I did think about the younger version of myself too, in a particular way, I think. But I was surprised by that. And as I continued to read through some of the different things, I found myself kind of going through the exercises a little bit and recognize some things that I hadn't necessarily really paid that much attention to before, I guess. So it was a really interesting experience for me. And I think part of it is just there is a lot happening and that is stressful. There are things happening in my kind of in this season of my life and where things are. And I recognized that I think part of the reason that the idea of the inner child felt a little bit more maybe tender in a sense, maybe a little bit more sensitive. And I didn't realize that as I was reading it, it was afterward, because since learning about my biological father, the man I thought was my dad is not. Since learning about that, I have found myself kind of reflecting a little bit more on different things about my childhood and my relationship with my mom as well. And so reading it, I found myself feeling some things that I hadn't really connected to before. And it's not that I was even thinking specifically about, in fact, I wasn't thinking at all about the biological father thing. So I wasn't aware that was present, and I'm not even entirely sure that it was. But I think because of the situation with my biological father and different things that it's brought up and things that it's made me think about and kind of reflect on, that increased that level of vulnerability for the inner child. And so it was just a really kind of interesting experience. And I thought, with all the work that I have done over the years, that there's still something there. There's still connection to make. There's still healing to happen. And while I've known this about people generally, it just really kind of made me recognize that I don't know that we give enough. I'm not sure what the best word to use is. Credence, I guess. I don't know. Importance on the reality of that. And healing your inner child can really look a lot of different ways. I don't think that there's specifically a right way to do it. I think there can certainly be probably some not helpful ways to do it, but I don't think there's like one right way to do it. There's layers that have to happen. And so I wanted to share with you just kind of one little piece that is in the book. And so this is it, Healing Your Inner Child. This line is not part of the front cover design. This is just the proof copy. It says not for resale. I haven't got my author copy yet, so that is not part of the design. That would not look as good. But I wanted to read this part to you, or share this part with you, to just have you kind of think about how these things, if they are relevant for you, might be continuing to show up in your life, or maybe specifically for a period of time they really showed up, and the impact that might have had on you in terms of what you believe about yourself or your ability to really connect with people around you. So as I read this, it's kind of a short part, and it's just going to have you kind of think about your own life. But as I read this, just see if you can focus on what I'm saying, so not get distracted by something, and just notice what comes up for you as you listen, where you find some relevance or resonance, where maybe something doesn't seem to fit. Does it bring up something else for you? So this is from the section Releasing What Was Never Yours. And the particular part is the weight that you've been carrying. So I talk about how the weight of all the things that the wounds have meant to us, and carrying that through our lives. And I've used the analogy before of carrying a lot of rocks in a backpack up trying to reach that summit. So these are the rocks. These are some of the ways that these rocks might look. I'm responsible for everyone's happiness. If I'm good enough, people won't leave me. You could also add, if I'm good enough, people will love me. I cause the problems in my family. And that could sound a lot of different ways. I'm too much, too sensitive, too needy. I have to earn love through performance. So who I am is not enough. I have to do things to earn love. I have to do things to be of value. Other people's needs matter more than mine. I'm fundamentally flawed, broken, or bad. And those are the things that people tend to hold on to continue to believe that they are responsible, that it's their fault. If I were better or different, I wouldn't have been hurt. Now, an interesting thing about the impact that we experience is that for a lot of people, you might hear these things and think, well, I never thought those things as a kid. And the truth is that there's a really good chance you may not have had any of those specific thoughts as a kid, because this language is more adult language. These are more thoughts that come from understanding what it is that we believe. So as children, when we think I'm responsible for everyone else's happiness, that's an idea that we hold, but what we're saying to ourselves or how we're beating ourselves up is there's a good chance it's not going to be, I'm responsible for everyone's happiness. It could come out as, if I hadn't done that, then my mom would be happy. Or if I could just be better, then my dad would be proud of me. If I got my homework done, I wouldn't have gotten beaten. So it can come out in a lot of different thoughts, but the underlying belief that we carry about who we are can be more like, I'm responsible for everyone else's happiness. And that's part of the challenge with healing generally, is that we're often not aware of just how frequently our ideas are showing up, how frequently they can be reinforced over days, weeks, months, years, and decades. And that is why, again, we are so deeply impacted, because it's reinforced over time. And we will look for the evidence that those things are true. And of course, that's not an exhaustive list. There are so many different types of rocks that we might be carrying. And some days they might feel really heavy. Some days they might feel like they're not there at all. But it doesn't mean that they're not. It's just kind of where we are. And so these things tend to stay with us over time. They play out in how we feel, how we show up, and how we respond to experiences that we have, how safe we can feel with other people. It really does affect everything. And so this workbook, it's not very long. There's place to journal and stuff too. So it's not a very long workbook, but it kind of touches on some different aspects of what is important in being able to heal. And so if healing your inner child is something that you are interested in, then maybe consider it. You can take a look. It's available on Amazon internationally as well. In a paperback version. So if that's something you're interested in, then check it out. I will share a link below in the description to the US link, or to the US Amazon. I don't know what happens if you click on that link in another country. I'm assuming it might redirect you to your country's Amazon, but I'm not sure. So additionally, if you are interested in working through this workbook and would like a space to work together on this workbook, I am considering creating a group inside Facebook to work through this book together. I'm leaning towards about 6 or so weeks. It will be a paid group, but we will kind of explore the book together and we'll connect. And if you've ever done a group with me, you kind of know what that looks like. And if you haven't, I will be sharing some different things. We'll get together on a Zoom call at least once, maybe twice. But it'll be an opportunity to just kind of work together in this. On my branding, it says Healing Childhood Trauma Together. And a group experience is such a beautiful way to be able to actually experience it, what that togetherness really can mean. So if that's something you're interested in, I would love to have you join me. I don't have a webpage or anything right now. I'm just trying to gauge interest. If there's enough interest, then I will be doing the group. So, and I have already had a few people tell me that they're wanting to do it. So let me know in the comments if that's something you would like to do. It is on Facebook. You don't have to show up at any particular time. You don't even have to necessarily share a whole lot if you don't want to. but it will be a private Facebook group. So if you've got questions, you can also let me know, but definitely let me know in the comments if it's something that you're interested in doing. And whether you get this workbook or not, it is important to think about the wound or wounds that you experienced at different stages in your life and the impact that has. And another piece of this, which is something that we are kind of collectively experiencing, is that because of what is happening around us, culturally, societally, systemically, there's so much about that. And I have kind of talked about this a little bit, but there's so much about that feels familiar to experiencing dysfunction, chaos, uncertainty, or trauma as a child. And that is that there's a lot of uncertainty and you don't know what's happening, or when something bad, worse is going to happen. Is today going to be a good day or is today going to be the day? Like there's just, a lot of unknown. And with that, we have people around us that maybe are just turning away and pretending that it's not happening. We may have some people around us, and we certainly can see them on social media or wherever out in the community, who are pleased with what's happening, who fully support what is happening. And if you think about being a child who's experiencing childhood trauma, we experience those things, right? Whether it's somebody not paying attention, somebody maybe knowing in some way, maybe you've even said something to them and they kind of blow it off. They turn away, they don't want to look at it. And then we have people who are like, well, what did you do? Or why didn't you say no? Or they didn't mean it, right? And we are collectively experiencing that in so many different ways right now. So for a lot of people, the inner child piece is quite likely a little bit more present than maybe it might have been previously, because of that sense of familiarity in what is happening. So just something to be mindful of, to be compassionate with yourself about, especially if you find that you're feeling irritable, if you're having difficulty concentrating, if you're procrastinating, if you're struggling in some ways and you're kind of beating yourself up about it. Try to remind yourself that there are reasons, valid reasons, that you might be struggling more than maybe what you were a few years ago, or even a decade ago. Because that is important. Self-compassion is really important, especially when you are struggling and or feeling vulnerable. So, what did come up for you? Share in the comments. Let me know if you're interested in possibly doing a group. Because the book just came out, it was officially, I think, available on Sunday. I'm thinking the group might start in the next few weeks. I want to give people a chance to get the book and have an opportunity to just kind of go through it a little bit, not necessarily work through it, but just kind of go through it to familiarize yourself with it a little bit. So I'm thinking maybe like, I don't know, a few weeks from now, few weeks from now or so. So let me know in the comments if you're interested, and I will look forward to seeing you soon here and maybe in a private group. Thanks so much for being here.